Morant with a running start. Elevate! Dunks! Oh my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! Ja Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. Also, the Grizzlies retire Tony Allen's jersey edition. I am freshly returned from a drive to Memphis, Tennessee. I took the kids to Memphis for the end of our spring break to see the Grizzlies play 2 basketball games and also, of course, make them sit through the Tony Allen retirement ceremony. They got to stay up very late and hear a bunch of cussing. So, happy spring break, kids. But on today's episode, I'm going to talk about the jersey retirement ceremony, some of the things I observed there. Of course, I'm going to talk about the win over the Heat. I'll also talk a little bit about the loss to the Cavaliers on Friday night. And, oh, by the way, we have Ja Morant injury news. So before we get into all of that, just a reminder, if you want to support the creation of this show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. That is the best way to directly support the creation of these episodes. If you sign up over there, you can join the listener Slack. You also get a monthly bonus episode. Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. I guess we should start with Ja Morant's injury status. The Grizzlies are on a road trip right now. They play the Sacramento Kings tonight. They are underdogs because Ja Morant is out for the game, and he's not out for the game with the usual soreness and or shoulder injury. He has a hamstring issue now that apparently he's dealing with. Now, the last time we saw Ja Morant play was on Friday night, and he was scintillating. He was all world. Yes, the Grizzlies got beat by a lot, or technically they came back and made it respectable looking, but they were dominated by the Cavaliers, but it wasn't Ja Morant's fault. Ja Morant had 44 points in that game, a season high 44 points. That was Ja's 6th straight game that he played in. That's the first time Ja Morant has played 6 straight games since the 2023 season, which that then ended with Ja Morant getting suspended. This is the first time since Ja Morant got suspended the first time that he'd played 6 straight games. Now, I think a lot of us figured, he might miss the second out of the back-to-back, the Tony Allen retirement ceremony game, jersey retirement ceremony game on Saturday. We weren't surprised where he was questionable for the game and then ended up not playing. The surprise or the disappointing/worrying bit of news that popped up was that he's out with a hamstring issue against the Kings on Monday night. Also, by the way, Scottie Pippen Jr., who's been playing really, really well. More on that in a second, but Scottie Pippen Jr. is questionable for this game. So the Grizzlies might have no true point guard really available. I mean, Desmond Bane frequently shines in these opportunities. Luke Kennard can maybe step up and help out there. Maybe Vince Williams Jr. will have a good game handling the basketball if Scottie Pippen Jr. misses. But we can start with that. First of all, I think it's fair to be worried about Ja Morant's hamstring issue, the latest injury problem that has popped up for him. Now, a little bit more about that loss to the Cavaliers. Yes, it was probably upsetting that you got dominated once again by an elite team. There's just a chasm. There's a massive chasm between the Grizzlies and the Cavaliers and maybe the Thunder and the Celtics. Even though the Grizzlies 1-0 against the Celtics this year, the Grizzlies are not on that tier of basketball team. And even though the Cavs were missing Donovan Mitchell, it didn't matter. The Cavs are an absolute machine and systematically dismantled the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies could not stop the Cavaliers. They had no prayer. Now, maybe there was some shooting luck involved there. I mean, luck is not quite the word, but there was a massive shooting disparity. The Cavaliers made a bunch of three-pointers. The Grizzlies did not. The game I was playing with my children was, hey, how many points are the Grizzlies losing just on three-pointers? And so my son's all like, 27. Okay, that's right. They have 9 more threes than us now. It was funny, the second night of the back-to-back against the Heat, there was like 5 minutes left in the second quarter. I think the Heat had 3 three-pointers, and I was telling the kids, hey, last night at this time, the Cavaliers had 12 made three-pointers. Like, the Cavaliers scored 36 points in the first quarter, and that was their lowest scoring quarter until the fourth quarter. The Cavs scored 112 points through the first 3 quarters. That's the most points the Grizzlies have allowed through 3 quarters all season. The previous high was 104 points. That was in the second loss to the Thunder. Now, actually, maybe I buried the lead a little bit about this game. Maybe the most important part of this game and the most surprising part of this game, it's been maybe washed away under all the news and events of the past few days. But Jaren Jackson Jr. played in this game, and that was a big surprise. He was not expected back from injury. He bypassed the being listed as doubtful on the injury report, the thing we've grown accustomed to. Good news, Santi Aldama, doubtful for Monday night's game against the Kings, so hopefully that means he's available to play on Wednesday night. But Jaren Jackson Jr. actually returned. He was available for the game. He ended up playing both nights of the back-to-back. But Jaren Jackson Jr. returning, that's probably the biggest story from this one outside of Ja Morant's incredible performance. Now, Jaren, offensively, a little bit quiet. Didn't have the best game. And also probably this game was considered, a matchup of the 2 front runners for Defensive Player of the Year. And it's unfortunate that Jaren had 4 steals and 2 blocks in this game. And you'd think, wow, so he really made a strong case for Defensive Player of the Year. No, it isn't really how it works. Evan Mobley had a huge game. The Cavaliers won comfortably. I think this game actually furthered Evan Mobley's lead in the Defensive Player of the Year race. But let's talk a little bit more about Ja Morant's game because it does need to be, I think, highlighted a bit more. He did some notable things in this one. I mean, beyond the fact that he was scintillating, which he was, this was arguably the best game he's played all year, even though the Grizzlies were not really close while Ja Morant was in there. The Cavaliers were paying him a lot of attention, and yet he still was able to get to the rim. It felt like whenever he wanted. Ja shot 77.3% on his way to scoring 44 points. He also had 8 rebounds and 7 assists. Just an incredible individual performance for Ja Morant. He was 16 for 18 on 2-pointers. That is the highest field goal percentage on 2-pointers for any player in any game in Grizzlies franchise history with at least 15 or more 2-point attempts. If we lower it down to double-digit 2-point attempts, then there's Tony Allen. 12 for 12 against the Lakers. This is one of the funny moments if you saw it from the Tony Allen jersey retirement ceremony. Rob Fisher was talking to Zach Randolph and Mark Gasol and asked them, do you know which player holds the Grizzlies franchise record for the most field goal attempts in a game without a miss?
Tony Allen has the most field goals made in a game in Grizzlies history without a miss. 12. Does that surprise you?
Damn.
All layups.
I didn't know
Wait a
that.
minute, what was
All
that stat
layups.
again? Hold on. I'm an analytical kind of guy sometimes. What was that stat?
Most field goals made in a game without a miss.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's me.
That's you, TA.
That's me. Yeah, that's
Tony Allen is like, read back that stat. Yeah, that's me. He knew it. The joke was only Tony Allen knew that stat. I don't mean to be a nerd. With Tony Allen being perhaps my favorite all-time NBA player, I absolutely knew that stat. I knew the game specifically that had happened. The Grizzlies lost the game to the Lakers. I couldn't believe the Grizzlies lost a game where Tony Allen went 12 for 12 from the field. But Ja Morant, 16 for 18 on 2-pointers. That is 89% on 2-pointers. That is tied for the 12th highest two-point field goal percentage for any game in NBA history where a player took at least that many two-pointers. The 12th highest two-point percentage in any game in NBA history for a player attempting at least 18 two-pointers. The best field goal percentage is 100. Giannis and Wilt Chamberlain each had a game where they went 18 for 18 on two-pointers. Also notable, Ja Morant is shorter than I am. This is a 6'2", 6'1" guard doing this. So an unbelievable performance from Ja Morant. Despite that, the Grizzlies could not slow down the Cavaliers whatsoever, and no one else really helped him out. No one really had that good of a game. I mean, Jaren did some nice things defensively, didn't really shoot the ball that much, and maybe you could say, well, Ja's got to get his other players more involved. False. Ja shot an incredible percentage, got right to the rim whenever he wanted. Meanwhile, the teammates were missing bunnies left and right. Like poor Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane had a really bad game. He had 5 turnovers, made 5 out of 16 field goal attempts, including missing an uncontested layup on the underside of the rim. I mean, maybe you could point to, say, Scottie Pippen Jr. had a good game. He continued his streak of providing a spark off the bench. Like, Scottie was good. Brandon Clark tried. You know, he made 5 out of 7 field goal attempts, had 13 points. But the Grizzlies didn't have enough to compete with the Cavaliers. Like, Luke Kennard was truly awful. Luke Kennard had 0 points, 0 assists, and 3 turnovers in 15 minutes. Also, like, there was very little conviction, it felt like, from the coaching staff on which players they wanted to play. I mean, all right, first half, you play 11 guys. We've seen this before. You could say this is a strategy because you're on the first night of a back-to-back. You could even argue the strategy worked. You won comfortably against the Heat. You're now 10-3 on the second night of back-to-backs. That is commendable. That's amazing, frankly. But it sort of felt like they were just throwing whatever they could against the wall and see what sticks. Like first half, 11 guys play. It's not really working. All right. Second half, Zach Edey gets benched 2 minutes into the second half. Doesn't play again. Gigi Jackson and Jay Huff, they played in the first half. They did not play in the second half. In the third quarter, Lamar Stevens and Cam Spencer, it's your turn. What can you provide? So that means the Grizzlies played 13 players in the first 3 quarters. By the way, Marvin Bagley and John Conchar got in for mop-up duty, meaning the Grizzlies played all 15 available players. You don't see it that frequently. But it does feel like they were just searching for answers. They couldn't get stops. They weren't making three-pointers. Ja's going off, but no one else is doing anything. I took a picture at one point. Ja had 14 points. Everyone else on the court had 0. At least all of his teammates, that is, had 0 points. The Cavaliers had no problem scoring and spreading the scoring around. But it feels to me a little late in the season to still not really know which guys you're going to play or who you want to play. I mean, Gigi Jackson. All right, so he got benched against the Jazz for a defensive mistake. He didn't come in the third quarter. He sort of got benched after halftime. He gets back in garbage time, gets a bunch of shots up, finishes a not pretty 2 for 9 from the field against the Cavs. Now against the Heat, he played 5 minutes to start the second quarter. Didn't come in the second half at all. Benched again for the second half until garbage time once again. Now, as of Monday morning, he's been assigned to the Memphis Hustle. Now, you might paint this, or he might even paint this as, oh, I asked to go to the Hustle to get some reps in or to practice with the team. I don't know if they have a game today or not. Sorry, I'm not very aware of what the Memphis Hustle do. I'll be honest. My bandwidth can't really take that in. But Gigi Jackson has not delivered by any stretch of the imagination. He's clearly lost the trust of Taylor Jenkins. He's not someone they're going to depend on. So Gigi Jackson has sort of fallen out of the rotation. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there on a packed episode. The Grizzlies can't compete against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now, you're 0-2 against the Cavs this season. Neither game, I guess you could say the first game was sort of competitive because they did cut it to 3 in the final minute. You're 0-3 against the Thunder, 0-2 against the Knicks, 1-0 against the Celtics. That's pretty good. You're 0-2 against the Clippers, 1-3 against the Rockets. Let's see, 1-2 against the Lakers. Long and short of it, you struggled against the very best teams, so not ideal. Now, let's wash that away. We can worry about that later. Let's talk about the win over the Miami Heat, and we'll do that right after this short break. All right, the Miami Heat came into FedEx Forum on Saturday night, losers of 6 straight, and they did not really have what it took to hang with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies got their first, I'll say, comfortable win in a pretty good bit. The Grizzlies got off to a great start. They scored 38 points in the first quarter. That is their highest scoring first quarter since the All-Star break. This is easily, again, their biggest blowout since the All-Star break. Now, that big lead in the first quarter, they did give up almost all of it to start the second quarter. Much like they did against the Cavaliers, they gave up a big run at the start of the second quarter. Gigi Jackson was on the court for the second quarter start once again. It's not all Gigi Jackson. It's a team basketball game. You had a lineup anchored by Jaren that also had Cam Spencer and Zach Edey out there. I think Luke Kennard was the 5th player on the court. But the Heat did cut it to 3, but then the Grizzlies built the lead back up before halftime. Jaren and Bane, without Ja there, were absolutely enormous. Jaren had 23 points in the first half. Desmond had 12 in the first half. Desmond had a great bounce-back game. He nearly got a triple-double, or flirted with a triple-double, perhaps. Bane finished with 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists. He made 4 out of 5 three-pointers. Jaren finished with 31 points. And so those guys really carried the day to make it that comfortable victory. Also, Scottie Pippen Jr. once again had a really strong game, being a spark plug off the bench. By the way, Scottie against the Cavaliers had 8 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals. Against the Heat, he had 11 points and 11 assists and 2 steals. So this is now 7 straight games for Scottie having at least 2 steals coming off the bench. He's the only player in the NBA this season to pull off that feat. The only player in franchise history to have more games with at least 2 steals while coming off the bench is Nick Calathis. He has 8. So Scottie has a chance, I guess, if he plays tonight and doesn't start, he has the opportunity to match Nick Calathis. By the way, the 11 assists for Scottie. That is the 5th game this season where he's had 10 or more assists off the bench. Scottie now has the most games in franchise history with 10 or more assists in a bench role. He now has 1 more than Brevin Knight and Earl Watson. By the way, Jaren's 31-point performance against the Heat, this was his 12th 30-point performance of the season, matching his career best for most games in a season with 30 points from last year. He's obviously, I think, going to break that. You'd expect him to have one more 30-point game this year. At least I would. By the way, Ja's 44-point game against the Cavaliers. This was Ja's 9th regular season game. With 40 or more, he has by far the most of those games than anybody else in franchise history. Jaren is second with 6 40-point games in the regular season. The core 4, they had 2 combined. Mark and Mike both had 1 40-point regular season game. They're both tied with, say, Gigi Jackson and Kenneth Lofton Jr. It was a different era. Anyways, wrapping up the Heat game before I get to a couple thoughts about the Tony Allen jersey retirement ceremony. Brandon Clark was really, really good. And while this game, it wasn't close. Yeah, all right, the Heat got it to within 3, but the Heat are sort of a broken team they've lost the will to fight. And, the Grizzlies built the lead way back up. They had a 25-5 run in the fourth quarter to make the score truly outlandish. I think the Grizzlies got up by 32 in this game. It did feel like anytime the Heat were maybe going to cut into like a 12 to 15 point lead, that Brandon Clark delivered with one of his floaters. It seemed like he had a lot of timely baskets in this one. He was snuffing out any hint of a Miami Heat run. He ended up scoring just 12 points, but he made 6 out of 7 from the field. Only played 14 minutes. Here's a cherry-picked stat for you. This was Brandon's 21st game of his career where he took at least 7 shots and made 85% or better of them. That is by far the most in franchise history. Marc Gasol is a distant second with 9 of those games. And then our guy Tony Allen, third. He had 8 of those games. Jalen Wells. We should talk briefly about Jalen Wells. Against the Heat, he was 1 for 5 on his three-pointers. Against the Cavaliers, he missed his only three-point attempt. He was 3 out of 4 on 2-pointers against the Cavs. Got some breakaway layups. Some nice finishes in traffic. He had a really good and one that I remember also against the Heat. But Jalen's three-point numbers have been plummeting. During the most recent homestand, Jalen was just 2 for 17 on threes since February 1st, which of course is an arbitrary cutoff. But since February 1st, Jalen is only making 29% of his three-pointers. For the entire season, he's down to 36%, which is average, which is okay. But currently, it is going the wrong way. He is definitely slumping right now. There's a legitimate question. One, how much can you depend on him in the playoffs? How much can you depend on him against the good teams? And right now, I think when you look at the Grizzlies' main rotation, there are still big question marks. And like Chris Harrington and I got into it some in last episode, there are big questions about, like, can you trust Jalen Wells and Zach Edey and Luke Kennard when you're playing the good teams? Which players can you trust? And we thought we were going to be able to trust Vince Williams Jr. this season. Not so much. Vince played, against the Cavs, but wasn't available. He still hasn't played on the second night of a back-to-back, and he hasn't been particularly great this year when he's played either. So none of that's perfect. Against the Heat, at least Edey had a couple of monster dunks. He got a lot more playing time, played 27 minutes, had 12 points and 8 rebounds, 5 of those on the offensive glass. Desmond Bane's rebounding numbers. So he got the double-double. This is his 7th game of the season with at least 10 rebounds. By the way, Jaren only has 4 games this season with 10 rebounds. If I were Desmond Bane, I would poke fun at Jaren Jackson Jr., my much taller teammate, about that stat. Lamar Stevens was trusted with a main rotation role in this one. He had 7 points and 5 rebounds, got a steal and a block and an assist. Cam Spencer played in the regular rotation. They trusted Cam Spencer, who is not playoff eligible on that 2-way contract. They trusted Cam Spencer with minutes. He hit a couple of threes, finished with 6 points. And I think that basically wraps up everything we need to talk about. I mean, right now, the big picture things, the Grizzlies are virtually tied in this race for the 2 seed. The Rockets now, if the season ended today, the Rockets are back in second. The Rockets, somewhat under the radar to me, have been winning a bunch of games in a row. The Rockets are now second. The Nuggets are third. The Grizz are fourth, but they all have the same record. Of course, the Grizzlies lose a tiebreaker to the Rockets. The tiebreaker with the Nuggets right now, I think, would go to the Grizzlies because they are a division winner, but they have a 3rd game to play, and the winner of that game will have the tiebreaker. Head-to-head tiebreaker is the priority. If there's a 3-way tie, then I can't remember. It might go to, I think it goes to conference record in that situation if the Rockets, Grizzlies, and Nuggets all finish with the same record. Meanwhile, the Lakers are in 5th. They're just right behind the Grizzlies. If the season ended today, it would be a Grizzlies and Lakers 4-5 matchup. This is not what I want. I mean, first of all, I don't want to be on the 4-5 matchup anyways. I want to get out of the Thunder side of the bracket. So I desperately want to be the second or third seed. But also in the first round, I don't want to play Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Don't sign me up for that. Also, for a long time, and it still feels this way, it seemed like the floor for the Grizzlies was the 5 seed. Unfortunately, the Warriors won't lose. They're 13-1 or 14-1 with Jimmy Butler. So the Warriors are gaining ground. Meanwhile, the Timberwolves have won 8 straight. So currently, things are getting maybe a little tight, a little too close for comfort in the Western Conference. Currently, the Grizzlies have a 3.5 game lead over the Warriors and Timberwolves. And that should be enough. But currently, the Grizzlies are on a relatively tough road trip. I mean, you played the Kings, the Clippers, the Jazz, the Thunder. Oh, and the Blazers were there. It's the Kings, then the Blazers, and then Clippers, Jazz, and then the Thunder. It's a 5-game road trip. Yeah, you're going to be favored against the Blazers. They've been playing better of late, even though they had a recent little losing streak. The Jazz, who knows? You haven't played well against the Jazz this year, and you're going to be on the road. At least you'll be rested for that game. They have several days off beforehand. But then once this 5-game road trip ends, you come home for a very challenging homestand against the Lakers, Celtics, and Warriors. So you should be fine, but where it seemed like there was no chance of the Warriors or Timberwolves possibly catching you, those teams both on winning streaks, and the Grizzlies are, I don't know, kind of petering along. They're not exactly stringing together a bunch of impressive wins right now. So it is a little bit of something to monitor. And now let's talk a little bit about the Tony Allen retirement ceremony. It was a joy for me. Again, Tony Allen, one of my favorite players of all time, probably my favorite player of all time. For many years, I called him my favorite player of all time. I was one of the biggest grit and grind people. I mean, obviously the show's called Grits and Grinds. I mean, the name for me taken from my previous or my other podcast that was breakfast themed, Fast Break Breakfast. So when trying to come up with a Grizzlies name, let's go with the breakfast food grits. But obviously Tony Allen, big inspiration. He is that archetype of player I've always liked that carried over into enjoying like D'Anthony Melton and liking Vince Williams Jr. I like the defensive minded guys, the hustle players. I also liked guys who maybe weren't 100% popular. And while everyone loves Tony Allen now, a lot of that is just, it's like retroactive, where now the approval rating is so much higher. Back in the day, it was more controversial to be a Tony Allen guy, to be like, that's our guy, that's our heart and soul, that's who needs to play. So it was awesome to see Tony Allen get this honor. And then, of course, there's the reunion of old players coming back, Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. They were both there. Mike Conley was not able to make it. So the Timberwolves played on Friday night. They scheduled it on Saturday so there'd be a chance that Mike Conley could maybe get on a jet and make it there and then get back to the Timberwolves game on Sunday. But there were these extreme storms in Memphis. There were all these tornado watches going on. The conditions were favorable for severe storms across the nation and specifically in Memphis. And so I think the situation was Mike Conley, they couldn't fly into Memphis. And so because of that and the narrow window he had to travel, Mike did not make it. But there were other Grizzlies players there. Rudy Gay was there, Bano Udrih, Ed Davis, Vince Carter, Quincy Pondexter. They were all there. I think one of my favorite things about the ceremony, so, I mean, you have also Paul Pierce and Derrick Rose. They were there to talk about Tony. And, like, there were all these great moments of the ceremony, a lot of very funny moments. But I thought one specific highlight was that Rudy Gay was given like a very warm ovation. And he got, I think, to receive a lot of love from Grizzlies fans. And if you've been a Grizzly fan for, 10 years, or if your fandom goes back, 15 years, that covers the time that Rudy Gay was on the team, based on circumstances completely out of Rudy Gay's control, he basically got erased from Grizzlies history. You have the core four that did not include Rudy Gay, and there were years where Rudy Gay was one of the Grizzlies' best players, and he was good for the Grizzlies. Now, the reasons these circumstances happened, he was hurt during the playoff run where the Grizzlies won their first playoff series. And then the Grizzlies never won a playoff series when Rudy Gay was healthy. And then they traded him, of course, for Tayshaun Prince. And then the Grizzlies got even better after that. So Rudy Gay has been erased. And so there's never been a clear, easy opportunity, I feel like, for Grizzlies fans to just show their appreciation to him. Because he was a very good player, and the Grizzlies were good with Rudy Gay. And so he was there. He hadn't been there for the previous guys, I don't believe. I'm almost certain he wasn't there for Mark. I don't think he was there for the Zach Randolph jersey retirement. But he was sitting on the stage with the players and the GM and Lionel Hollins and Chris Wallace and all this. But like the camera went to him and everyone got to cheer, and they cheered for a very long time. Frankly, I was a little bit nervous. The emotion of the moment, I thought maybe, all right, are we going to do a standing ovation? Because maybe a standing ovation is too much, but we didn't. It was just a very nice round of applause for Rudy Gay and him getting to receive that love from the fan base. I thought that was a really cool moment, and so I enjoyed that. Beyond that, just the celebration, the way we have, canonized the Core 4 and the grit and grind era. It's what we have as Grizzlies fans, and it was a special moment, and I love the way the team delivers that back to the fans and to the players. So it was a really special moment. I think you can still watch it, probably. I think it's on YouTube, or it was broadcast locally. So absolutely watch it if you haven't. It was a very moving moment, very funny. Also, it started running a little long. Tony Allen just kind of freelanced for a while, talking to everybody on the stage. Some jokes about some rough practices with Quincy Pondexter, about how Lionel Hollins didn't totally believe in him when they started. It was, I'll say, if you brought your kids, a little bit challenging to stay out that late. I kept telling them, hey, you're going to stay up super late. They got a little bit bored. It got a little spicy with the language. I assume the FanDuel TV was able to have a 7-second delay. But overall, again, a great moment, and one of those things you have to go to, or you feel like you needed to go to if you're a big Grizzlies fan. And now they got 3 of them down. The next one for Mike Conley. Whenever he retires, that will happen. But anyways, good job, by the way, to the Grizzlies for putting that whole thing together. And it was really cool. And of course, all heart, grit, grind, the mantra of the Grizzlies. And I mean, again, Tony Allen defined the era with his words. That became the branding that they used and how everyone remembers it. So congrats to Tony Allen for that. I had a great time watching it. And with that, I think we probably hit everything. I probably omitted some things on this slightly longer episode, but the Grizzlies, they're right now neck and neck in a very important playoff race, and we have these Ja Morant injury concerns to worry about. So we got a lot to think about coming up. Anyways, hope y'all have a great Monday. Reminder, if you want to support the creation of this show, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Also, tell your friends about the show. Anyways, hope you have a great Monday. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.